Thank you. European Commission Executive Vice President for a clean, just and competitive transition, members of the European Parliament, permanent representatives, ambassadors, Ambassador Alonso, Ambassador Torres, Directors General, directors of the EU institutions, bodies and services, representatives of trade unions and employers' organizations and other authorities, ladies and gentlemen. As General Director of New Economy Forum, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this Forum Europa event, the first one of the year here in Brussels. Once again, made possible thanks to the essential contribution of 5 companies that demonstrate their strong commitment to Europe and its citizens every day. These are Airbus, International Airlines Group, Indra, Solaria, and Telefónica. As many of you know, we started our activities here in Brussels in February 2024 in an inaugural conversation with President Roberta Metsola of the European Parliament under the motto, Ideas to Strengthen the Union. And since then, we have continued to consolidate Forum Europa as a meeting point for the political, economic, and social spheres of the European Union and its member states. Today, we would like to continue exchanging ideas to strengthen the Union, and for that we have the honor of welcoming Ms. Teresa Ribera, European Commission Executive Vice President for a clean, just, and competitive transition. Although Vice President Ribera's work is well known to all of you, let me quickly make a brief introduction before I give her the floor. Prior to joining the European Commission, Ms. Ribera, as you know, was Vice President of the Government of Spain and Minister for the Ecological Transition and the Demographic Challenge from 2018 to 2024, and Director of the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations from 2014 to 2018, enabling the Institute to play a key role in the negotiation of the Paris Climate Agreement and the transition towards sustainable development. Vice President Ribera served as the Spanish Secretary of State for Climate Change and Biodiversity from 2008 to 2011, responsible for environmental and climate policies, as well as the National Meteorological Agency. There is no doubt that Vice President Ribera is a politician of the highest caliber, with remarkable technical skills and an unwavering commitment to European values. And this is of the utmost importance if the European Union is to meet the challenges it faces, challenges which Vice President Ribera is already tackling with great dedication. In fact, due to the illness of President von der Leyen, to whom we wish a very quick and speedy recovery, Ribera was called upon to chair the meeting of the College of Commissioners last week, an additional responsibility at a time where many short-term issues are adding to the difficulties of an extremely complex legislature, including relations with the US under the leadership of President Trump starting today, as well as the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. We would like to thank Vice President Ribera for accepting our invitation to speak at Forum Europa about her vision for the new legislature in her area of responsibility, and more generally about the future strategic direction of the European Commission and the EU institutions in order to strengthen the Union. In recognition of her distinguished career, her political leadership forged in countless battles at the service of citizens, her commitment to Europe no matter what, her versatility as a long-distance and sprint runner, her proven sensitivity to climate change and sustainability issues, and many other achievements, it is a great honor to warmly welcome Ms. Teresa Ribera, European Commission Executive Vice President for a clean, just, and competitive transition to Forum Europa. So without further ado, thank you very much, Vice President. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks a lot for these introductory words. So nice and kind. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to address you today in a different setting. It is a different setting, but I feel at home. I feel at home because this is a type of event that New Economy Forum has been working for a very long while, already back in Spain, and they decided to enter into this very important endeavor to provide ideas to strengthen Europe. Build Europe together is a great task for all of us, but it is also a privilege. I remember this forum in Madrid, and I'm delighted to address you in Brussels in this point in time. It remains a very valuable opportunity to exchange views, share ideas, and hear directly from the industry, the experts, the media, on the challenges and opportunities we face together. Now more than ever, we find ourselves at a global turning point, facing challenges that sometimes make us feel overwhelmed. Recent shifts in the global leadership and dynamics in different contexts in the geopolitical arena have added a sense of uncertainty. Yet, in these moments of uncertainty, when we have to hold on to what makes us strong, it's time again to remind us that our core values of trust, continuity, cooperation, reliability, respect for fundamental rights and freedoms, and dialogue are a must for Europeans. It may be particularly difficult, but we build opportunities on those values. Anyone thinking that learning to reduce risk in our investments, targeting a resilient future, has no sense, or it is a mistake? No, of course not. Business and economies thrive on predictability and reliability, and here we are. Societies rely on a better future, and here we are. It is here where Europe offers an unrivaled advantage. Our strong institutions, social stability, highly educated people, strong cohesion, our problem-solving capacities, robust legal frameworks, and commitment to multilateral cooperation offers the predictability and reliability that others may miss. One of our greatest achievements, the single market, offers access to over 450 million potential consumers. Our harmonized regulations cut red tape for companies, allowing them to operate seamlessly in 27 countries. And our strong commitment to solidarity, social values, liberties, human rights and freedom, sustainability, and to a green economy that understands the challenges and tries to solve it in a context of cooperation makes our commitment one of the most appreciated places to live for people around the world. It is also a trusted destination for investment and innovation, offering an exceptional environment to foster creativity, address diverse needs, and achieve excellence. But we also need to take decisions grounded in a sound understanding of the facts and challenges that we face. And of course, there are many. From the availability of affordable energy and raw materials to the devastating consequence of climate change, these issues demand our committed attention as well as an adequate response. Ignoring these realities or delaying our decisions are not ways to solve the problems. They will not disappear. In fact, doing so mislead economic players and citizens and pose a significant risk to our future. Competing in global markets is challenging when basic inputs like energy or raw materials essential to every aspect of our economy are significantly more expensive than in other geographies. But relying on something that we do not produce is not a solution. We need a clean, affordable, and reliable energy supply for traditional industrial consumers and households, but also for the digital world, which has emerged as a demanding user of our energy resources. We also cannot compete without manufacturing capacity or reliable supply of raw materials. The supply of these materials is essential for anything we want to build, for the creation of jobs, prosperity, and reducing our vulnerabilities. We will remain competitive if we close the innovation gap, if we close the investment gap. Equally important is the efficient use of existing resources and a consistent development of circular economy practices. We have identified some of the present challenges: fragmented markets, limited access to renewable energy, raw materials, capital costs, adequate skills hinder our ability to meet today's demands. A lot can still be done to reduce these vulnerabilities, strengthen cooperation, and create opportunities for all but also to build much more peaceful relations, cooperative relations with third partners. We need to invest to ensure that the green transition drives modernization and improves production, boosting prosperity and unlocking long-lasting opportunities that benefit all. That's the main message of President von der Leyen, when underscoring that this is the mandate to turn our goals into reality, to deliver on our promises, and to ensure their implementation in a smart and inclusive way. She emphasized in her political guidelines the need to count on a competitiveness compass that, together with a clean industrial deal, can direct our efforts towards our vision: decarbonization as a source of long-term prosperity and resilience. Decarbonizing the economy at the lowest cost while driving growth and innovation and boosting modern industry is a powerful driver for a better and more competitive Europe, and also for an economy that serves human welfare. Making our economy fairer and more resilient in the face of disruption is a must. Reliable access to raw materials is key, but we may lack the right tools to ensure the objectives. We need to update these tools. To address this, we have to maximize the use of existing resources in our continent through efficiency and circular economy, while developing strong partnerships with other allies. For example, the European Union is a global leader in grid infrastructure technology and manufacturing, but relies heavily on imported raw materials like copper and critical power semiconductors. Addressing the supply chain dependencies is essential to maintain the EU's leadership amidst rising competition from emerging markets. Securing raw materials is important, but as I said, using the existing ones efficiently and promoting circularity is a no-brainer. There may be people who take this as an environmental imperative, but in fact, it is mainly an economic one. We work to enhance an economy that fosters job creation and that keeps people at its heart, drives prosperity for its citizens while remaining competitive on the global stage. In the European Union alone, achieving the EU's renewable targets will create over 3.5 million new jobs by 2030. Just within the renewable energy sector. In addition, we know that almost 200,000 workers will gain new skills in projects financed by the Just Transition Fund between now and 2029, because skills is also an important must. Now imagine the transformative impact this could have if we expand our efforts globally. Despite the highly complex and challenging environment, the EU is projected to see growth. The forecast is 1.5% for 2025 compared to 0.9 in 2024. The green transition unlocks opportunities for collaboration with European Union and international partners across key sectors, such as clean tech, advanced manufacturing, or digital innovation, and we should be ready to seize them. Of course, we may have new challenges and we will miss some partners, but I think that the sense of direction is clear and nothing could make us change our minds. Otherwise, we could be missing these opportunities. Cooperation is rooted on diplomacy and mutual understanding. That's why we have to work together and strengthen our relationships with other countries through cooperation, fairness, and respect for the international order. Strong partnerships with third countries, such as the European Union-Mercosur agreements, are examples of win-win cooperation. I'm a fan of this type of cooperation. Cooperation based on opportunities, growth, prosperity, and peaceful approaches. It creates opportunities for jobs, sustainable development on both sides, and it avoids using our resources to waste opportunities in the future. Promoting core values while at the same time fighting climate change, high standards competition, and social rights is part of the definition of our external relations agenda. At the same time, we have to continue working to unlock investments, create lead markets for clean tech, and put in place conditions for companies to grow and compete at a level playing field. And the world has changed also in this field. We need to ensure that business have the incentive to invest, innovate, and grow. This requires a combination of public and private finance, simplified and consistent rules, and a framework that supports sustainable growth. In this context, we have to make progress on the Capital Markets Union so that private savings can be channeled into our priorities and support robust value chains in circularity, renewables, infrastructure, efficiency, hydrogen, clean technologies, and so on and so on. We also need to address the increasing cost of natural catastrophes linked to climate change. Invest in resilience and anticipation is also important. It may cost up to 20% of a national budget, public budget, if we need to recover from this type of catastrophes. For this, we have to revamp the insurance financing model, putting forward a more integrated European solutions that safeguard our business and citizens. Competition policy has a pivotal role to play. It can spur on innovation, ensure fair and contestable markets, and create a more level playing field for the benefit of business and consumers. Sustained and effective competition is an integral part to keep prices down for consumers and business across Europe, as well as to promote greater productivity, investment, and innovation by business, large and small, all across the European Union. This is why we are working to adapt our competition tools to the new challenges that lie ahead. We will preserve the fundamentals. We have identified how to test of time has proven what it may require some changes. But we need to factor in today's complex technological, economic, and geopolitical challenges. The world is not anymore the type of world we used to know 20, 30, or 40 years ago. We need to ensure that competition policy continues to be an enabler of our other policy objectives, in particular, innovation, decarbonization, and economic security within our borders and a level playing field worldwide. Let me give you 4 concrete proposals we are already working on. We are already working on a new state aid framework to accelerate renewable energy investments and industrial decarbonization, ensuring efficient clean tech manufacturing capacity in Europe while preventing wasteful subsidy races between member states, as stated in the mission letter that President von der Leyen addressed to me. This new framework will give all 27 member states the tools to support and accelerate critical investments to address real market failures and not just serve national interests. Still, ideas to strengthen the Union. We will help enable cooperation between business for genuinely green initiatives by providing swift and constructive guidance to companies on the compatibility with European competition rules of their projects. We will review our horizontal merger guidelines, which have been in place for 20 years, to ensure they reflect the economic realities of today and that they give appropriate weight to innovation, investment, and the resilience of supply chains, without, of course, changing the core objectives of merger control, which is to prevent excessive and harmful concentrations of market power in the hands of very few companies. We will simplify, speed up, and bring to life new important projects of common European interest together with member states. In a world where platforms and big tech companies play a central role in our economy and the everyday lives of our citizens, we need to make sure that Europe's digital markets stay open for new players, new ideas, and new investments. This is why the Digital Markets Act is so important, to ensure that platforms create opportunities for startups and innovators, not shut them out, and to safeguard the rights of EU consumers when it comes to their data, their purchasing decisions, and their freedom of choice. At this crucial time, we have to adapt to the new global context, and competition policy is also key to improving Europe's resilience in a global context. The enforcement of the foreign subsidies regulation, as well as of the antitrust and merger rules, will increase security and reduce dependencies in the European Union. Now it is Europe's time to shine and to lead the way for a clean, just, and competitive transition. And we want others to join our goals. working together with our core values of trust, mutual respect, and transparency, leading us, I'm convinced, that can secure our shared future. Certainly, it will be a challenge, but one we are ready and energized to take on, because we are committed to delivering the best future possible for the European Union and for European citizens. And very honestly, in this endeavor, we count on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vice President. As in previous events, the Q&A session will be moderated by journalist Mr. Chris Burns. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diego. Happy New Year to everybody, by the way. Teresa, we did an event together back in 2023 about the social union. And you made a great talk about the importance of being competitive, making the green transition, but also being socially just in doing it. And you've been very successful in doing that as Deputy Prime Minister in Spain as well, working with the trade unions on getting Spain out of coal, for instance. So you seem well-footed for the job, obviously. But what makes you think, this is my question, before we get more questions in, please do send you, oh, we got some here. What makes you think that you can succeed where Mr. Timmermans couldn't?
Thank you so much for the question. In fact, I was surprised during my hearing in the European Parliament when there were many people saying, many MEPs, many members of the Parliament saying, but you are a Timmermans too. And I say, I'm not Franz Timmermans.
Yeah, and why? Why are you not Timmermans too? Because in your title is now also competition.
Yes.
Being competitive.
That's a difference.
We've added that word.
Now, I think that it was a great period to state the main elements in the horizon, so to provide a sense of direction. But I think that for implementing the pathways to reach these goals, it is important to remain quite attentive, paying attention to the different concerns and the different, comments, but also advice of the different players. I think that such a deep transformation of the way we produce, the way we consume, the way we identify values requires a much more committed dialogue with everybody. And probably he did not have the time to get into this very open conversation with everybody. But I think that we need to strengthen this capacity, so to provide any flexibility, but also sense of empowerment and participation in the definition of the pathway. So that's part of my role, matching, connecting dots.
And you talked about a clean industrial deal. What I read is that you're supposed to come forth with that. I think Madame von der Leyen asked you to present that in 100 days. Are you on track for that?
Yes, together with Vice President Séjourné, Commissioner Hoekstra, and many others, because in fact it requires thinking in terms of skills and labor force and job opportunities. It requires thinking in terms of energy, affordable energy. It requires thinking in how we can provide the setting, the environment, ecosystems that may underscore why we can rely on Europe and the Europeans. And yes, Vice President Séjourné with DG Grow, but Hoekstra with DG Climate, but also with the other colleagues dealing with the different aspects. We are building on that. We count on these 100 days to provide our inputs and to share with you all how we see things and keep on going, so that this flagship product can be a guide for the time to come in this mandate.
And I guess that clean industrial deal is in somewhat, or maybe even large part, based on the Draghi report, which calls for Europe to become more competitive, more realistic when it comes to regulation, greener, invest, all those key words, and I guess that would be part of the plan. Now, I've got a question here. that mentions the Draghi report and about in the report there are the vulnerabilities in the digital transformation and energy transition. Do you consider launching a special plan to deploy data centers on European soil and link them to a clean and secure energy supply?
Two comments. One of them is that it is quite interesting to see how in this term, in this mandate, there were two flagship reports that provided food for thought to the Europeans, but also energized our understanding and our credibility and reliability of the European project. It was Enrico Letta speaking more than a market, which is very important.
Yeah.
It's not just market that is going to solve everything, and the right balance between institutions, markets, and freedoms and rights for the citizens is key. And I think that this is something that we understand very well, but we need to get a little bit deeper on what is still to do at the European level.
We had Mr. Letta here, by the way, talking about that.
Yes, I know.
Yep.
I know. And Draghi saying, hey, let's work in a much more competitive Europe. And the combination of the two sets of ideas is quite good, and I would say quite complementary. Then you enter into the second part of your comments and question, which is, what about the data center?
Yes.
What about the digital revolution? Yes, of course, we need to count on this digital transformation and the data center and the supercomputing facilities that allow us to be much more efficient, smart, and provide services to households, industries, so to get into this virtuous circle to become more and more competitive and wise. At the same time, this poses huge new challenges because of the semiconductors and the capacities that and the materials that we and the infrastructures that we need to build in order to be sure that we can rely on that, because of the security concerns to avoid this being a risk,
yes.
Because of the consumption of such a small thing as energy, because it is these are facilities that require high amounts of energy. So it was not in our landscape when we were thinking about how to get a fully decarbonized energy system. We were not thinking about this additional amount of demand of energy. So I think that yes, we need to combine things, and we need to provide and identify the most efficient ways and the most effective ways to address this issue. But of course, it is something where I'm working with Vice President Birkunen, how DG Connect, DG Competition may work together with a proper assessment of the energy demands and the ways to avoid any type of clash between the different goals.
Right. And to stay independent, too.
And to stay independent, which is also quite important. Yes.
Exactly. As was in the question. Yeah. I have a question about being naive. Last week, you said Europe should not be naive in its relationship with other partners. This idea implies also not being naive about subsidies and something else. I missed it. Subsidies. Being naive about subsidies. What do you think?
So do you want me to comment on being naive and on subsidies, both things?
Yeah.
No, I think that yes. I think that the two ideas are important. On subsidies was a comment connecting back to either strengthen the Union and the European interests, or a kind of subsidies race where the national and the local interest overcomes the European understanding on how to be much more effective. And I think that we should avoid making these mistakes. If you are subsidizing that, I will subsidize twice. So getting into a race as if it were a marketplace that in fact does not help the consumers, the long-lasting sustainability of the industrial plants, but neither the European interest on how to be reliable and I would say strategically autonomous for the future. So yes, I think that we need to think in a different manner how we can combine public and private funding at the national and European level, but underscoring this European interest. And this concept of IPCIs, this new endeavor to work together at the industrial level with different innovative approaches, taking into consideration that there may be a smart combination of capacities between different sectors and different nations is important. Then being naive. Yes, I think we cannot be naive. I think that we are deeply rooted in a type of understanding at the international level that recognizes the value of the rule of law, an international order based in the law and the rights of the people, human rights, and cooperation. This is very important because it took decades to build this. And now, apparently, there are people that prefer a bilateral relation or an imposition of things. I think that we need to preserve this international order based in rules. But at the same time, we know that the world has changed and that there are many players all around the world willing to get their space and maybe willing to use all the capacities or maybe undermining this confidence on an international order based in rules. So we need to be strong and committed to the defense to these approaches, as well as the preservation of a level playing field in international markets, not just accepting that our single market is quite appealing, quite attractive to sell things, but that could create a challenge, a problem for those companies based in Europe that respect our legislation versus other countries other companies coming from abroad that could not be so committed.
Right, so this international order, relations with other countries, I can't help but to ask, of course, because there's a new president coming in today in the US. And not just because I have an American accent, because I'm also je suis citoyen européen aussi. But when it comes to subsidies, when it comes to also tariffs, how are you bracing yourself for the unknown? We don't know what kind of executive orders he's going to sign exactly today. But there's a lot of unknown. How are you prepared for that?
Well, I think that, first of all, as you say, we don't know. We don't know, and I don't think that we should be going beyond what we know. I think that we should look into our own capacities and weakness to build a stronger European Union.
You already have a trade defense toolbox that's been in place for quite some time.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that, that's the very first important point. I think that we don't know. I think that it is important to underline that we will always remain open and happy to build relationships that are based in cooperation, and we don't like this type of confrontational approach. We don't know what it may come, but I think that it is important to concentrate our efforts on our own interests. That's my first comment. The second comment is that we also know that going back in the understanding on the challenges for the future is not a good piece of advice. I mean, denying the reality or the economic impact of keep on going in the traditional development patterns may not help. We know that not being transparent on how we learn a much more wise investment pattern and identifying the risk of wasting money on things that could not last is not a good way. So I think that we may defend and we may underscore what we know, and we will remain open to a country that, just to be very honest, at the same time, no matter who is in the leadership, is a close ally for many reasons, dealing with global challenges, and is with your American accent, but based in Europe, you also understand that we share values and understandings in many fields. So let's see.
Okay, let's see. That's all we can do at this point. And another question. Traditionally, we had a commission for competition, a commissioner for competition. Your title is now Clean, Just, and Competitive Transition. Will competition be a major part of your mandate? How will that fit into your mandate? I think that's what they mean.
Well, I think that it fits at the very central part of my mandate. I think that you were commenting on Draghi's report.
Yes.
On how to be much more competitive. And as I was saying, I'm convinced that ensuring the level playing field is the main goal of the competition policy in no matter what country. I think that if we stop paying attention to the new challenges and the new concentrations of market power, we may be undermining our capacity to invest in innovation, to challenge into new opportunities that can create the prosperity of the future. So competition policy is a very powerful toolkit for whoever who is in charge of the European Commission, College of Commissioners, and building the European prosperity. But as I said, we also know that in the last mandate, we have made great efforts to update some of these tools towards new powerful players in global markets and European markets, such as the technological and digital world, but also to identify how we can ensure the level playing field at the single market, when there may be others willing to invest in an open economy such as ours. I think that it is also beautiful to think of European economy as an open economy, but of course, it needs to rely on a level playing field. And still, the combination of trade policies, trade tools, with competition policies is very, very important. To what extent we are sufficiently effective, to what extent we may still need to update some of these tools, is part of the assessment where we are right now. To what extent an update of where we need to concentrate the efforts of the services dealing with competition tools to ensure that things that are quite obvious and easygoing may count on guidelines and avoid this always complex relationship with the Commission services, and concentrate the efforts of the Commission services on those aspects that may become a little bit more complicated or at a higher scale, or so on and so on. So I think that this is, of course, a very relevant part of my mandate.
Now, you've talked about DMA, DSA, Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act. Here's a question on that. There are many expert voices on both DMA, DSA who claim that tech companies are failing to implement them, those rules, and defying the EU. Do you think this is the case in DMA, Digital Markets Act? The arrival of Trump, is it helping these companies?
I could say first that this is something that sometimes I find in the media, and I think that it is important to be bold and clear. We need to apply the legislation. This is quite obvious. This is so obvious that it is incredible that we need to insist on that. And the legislation was adopted in order to protect consumers, households and industrial consumers, to avoid the concentration of power in the markets. And it's true that it's a type of player that goes beyond the traditional economic players in our markets. And this is why we identified new ways to defend the rights, the notion of a gatekeeper. So how we get these players involved in the protection of consumers is very important. There are some deadlines. There is a capacity that needs to be put in place to keep an eye on how things evolve. And of course, under these conditions, the services do open investigations in case they consider that we need to find out how things are going on. But we will keep committed to this approach. To what extent this may be used in political terms by other political leaders, I think it is a mistake. because consumers are consumers in no matter what part of the world. And they expect from their own governments and administrations the protection that they require. So I think that it is very important to keep this cooperative approach that we have been working on with the American antitrust authorities for a very long while. Mm-hmm. In fact, since the previous Trump term. So I think that, well, we don't know, but we will try.
Okay. How will the EU reconcile the need to respect and uphold the rule of law and the voices in the European Union who advocate directly divesting in the UN, in other words, cutting back on support for the UN?
For the UN?
Yeah, that's right, I say UN.
Well, I think that there may be some that do not have long memories of what it means having or living in a world with no order. And I think that the European Union is probably, it is not the only one, but it is probably one of the international players that has invested most to ensure that we can count on reliable relationships and an increasingly fair relationship between the different players at the global scale. So, in fact, we may need to update the UN works and so on, but it could be a huge mistake to break this understanding of the rule of law.
Because I think what is indicated there is, maybe the new U.S. administration might also decide to pull the plug on certain programs or even agencies in the UN, and I think that is implied in the question, probably.
I think that it is important to say that there are if I make no mistake, 192 members to the UN. And this is not a question that deals with the European Union and a very important UN member, but all 192. This means that there may be many other countries, countries that could be looking on how we behave and how we react if there is someone challenging the UN system. And we deserve respect, but we also need to be reliable and to supply this sense of confidence and commitment, and we will do so.
Okay. I would like to ask for an invisible competitor factor. Accessibility in Europe has to be the best example of labor inclusion of people with disability. Will you have your help for that? The question is, will you help in that? We are aware that there are millions of people who are disabled in Europe, and they do need to be included in the labor force, for instance.
Something which is quite a signal is that we count on a vice presidents led by Vice President Minsatu that deals with these very important connections between skills, labor, education, and social rights, including the inclusion of disabled people. I think that this comes back to many of these very essential aspects of education and access to jobs opportunities. And this is also part of what I think we need to integrate when thinking in terms of growth or industrial plans, how we can be sure that when we think about opportunities around industry, fabricking, and in Europe, we are also thinking in terms of people and not only in terms of business opportunities, which is great. Business opportunities, financial opportunities, investment in our ground is fantastic, but the economy should be serving to the people and not the other way around.
Indeed. Here's a bit of a hot potato, especially considering that one of the sponsors is Telefonica, but let's hear what you have to say about this. What's your position on the sale or consolidation debate of the telecommunications sector? Should mergers of telco operators be promoted or competition be protected?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. In fact, last week I had the opportunity to meet the two big associations dealing with telecom, and I had very interesting conversations with the two associations. And of course, they may have different views on some of the key aspects. Some of them asking for a higher capacity to compete, contest, and anticipation in the visibility on how the spectrum bids may be sent, and so on and so on, and the others underscoring the capacity to invest in the infrastructure and to provide different services, and the lack of an updated vision in the sectoral regulation at the European level. And as I say, this is something that we need to reconcile together with Vice President Virkkunen. In general terms, I think that there are some commonalities and some interesting views. So to what extent some of them have dedicated a great effort to improve the efficiency in the use of materials or the use of energy that can create new opportunities, differentiated opportunities for the European companies in this sector. How we can ensure that we can provide a set of updated regulation that could facilitate the things to do, the challenges ahead, may be also very, very important. Then we come into this approach of how they work in the European market and in the global markets. And it is interesting because it is very difficult to identify how we can build on an integrated market instead of keep on going in a fragmented context as it stands today. It came up, this is a sector that came up connected to very heavy requirements of investment in infrastructure, but adapted to the national or local circumstances in each of the member states, and that the member states did play with this capacity to bid for the spectrum, for the access to the spectrum in the traditional way we understood the common goods and the common economic opportunities 30 years ago. And I think that it is difficult to reconcile a service that could go beyond one single country with the specificities of each member state. This is why it may be interesting to explore to what extent this idea coming from Draghi report, the 28th window, to what extent a combination, an access to a good that goes beyond a single country, and the authorization, the permitting beyond this single country may be an opportunity to build around. Still, to be tested, to be checked, to be explored.
What will the Clean Industrial Deal project, what will be the project's international partners? What will be its international dimension?
It is quite important to be coherent at the domestic level and the external dimension of the European Union. We cannot think of building a clean industrial deal and to fabric more in Europe, and at the same time not to make full use of our external policies and capacities. It connects back to the access to raw materials and the development of relationships with third countries or companies coming from third countries. So to ensure the certainty, the secure value chains, it provides an opportunity to invest in what I would call co-development, so to ensure that everybody can count on an opportunity to ensure development by the cooperation, through the cooperation providing raw materials, but also ensuring that there's an investment in these third countries. But it comes back also to the trade relations and the mirror effect between what it is acceptable and what it is the driver when we invest abroad and when we open our market to foreign investors. So I guess that this is part of the diplomacy, trade, and global gateways, so partnerships with third countries that matter.
Okay. how can civil society, I have so many questions here, c'est l'embarras du choix, it's unbelievable here. Thank you so much for all these questions. I can't get to all of them, but any case, when it's more legibly written and shorter, then I have more of a chance. But how can civil society organizations contribute to the clean, just, competitive transition in partnership with the Commission? How can civil society help here? Maybe.
Well, I think I've always been a fan of the civil society organizations because I think that, as I said before, for whatever we do, even more if it is a deep change as the one we are already experiencing, it is very important that the society understands and backs what we do, but also raises the points of concern of what we are not addressing properly. So I think that this is healthy civil society provides this support. This means that we need to update the way we relate to these civil society organizations to keep the door open to have a candid conversation with the different representatives of the civil society. But this also means that the civil society should find ways to express their views in a way that can be heard by the public opinion. This turns back into how open and respectful the public conversation is in our countries, and to what extent this is a very important value to ensure that democracy has a chance to keep on going and that the freedoms, liberties, and prosperity, even in a context of differences and, of course, approaches that may be radically different, turn back into a centrality that allow us to move forward.
Okay, I have barely 5 minutes left, so I'll try to get as many Q&As in as possible, if you can be as brief as possible. How do you plan to use state aid to push industrial electrification? How can state aid help industrial electrification? Especially probably the heavy industries that are very energy
there are already tools that provide answers to this question. I think that the competition services did ensure in the previous mandates that the different member states could use some, not some, but a large share of the revenues coming from the European trading scheme into a compensation for the cost of electricity being raised due to the CO2 intensity back to the industry, so to support the transformation and the electrification of these industries. There were proposals coming from different member states on how to support the transformation of the existing industrial plants. And there was this initiative to combine the European funding and the national funding so to encourage innovative approaches on how we could make this difficulty for the large industrial facilities to become much more resilient and to become decarbonized, so to ensure that they can go along in the years to come. I think that we need to update these tools, and we may need to identify how to combine the different facilities and fundings that sometimes are so many and so fragmented that it is difficult for any player to identify how, when, and what I should be doing at the different levels of administration to get access to this funding in a much more easier manner. There were some ideas coming from the political guidelines of Mrs. von der Leyen that can provide some clues about this. For instance, this competitiveness fund, which could be defined, shaped in different ways, but certainly needs to take into consideration that this fragmentation in the facilities and funds that already are available, together with the willingness and possibilities of the different member states to provide support, together with the cost of capital that may create the big difference in terms of the blending of public and private resources, can be easily tackled by anyone willing to count on this support.
Okay. With whom are you working on the competitiveness fund, and how far have you come?
Well, I could say that the official answer is what it is written in the mission letters. And the mission letters say that I should be working with Vice President Sejourné, with Commissioner Hoekstra, but of course financial services do rely on Commissioner Albuquerque, and the budget relies on Commissioner Serafin, not to mention other related aspects that are connected to the energy competence and so on. So I think that the most important answer is that we need a collegiality approach. Competitiveness for Europeans is not something that counts on a silver bullet coming from a single policy full stop. It needs to be consistent, but at the same time, we need to provide a simplified answer.
Okay, and you mentioned your mission letter. This question says, tax ruling and state aid are no longer mentioned in your mission letter. What is your plan?
What is not mentioned in my mission? Because there are so many mentions in
taxes and state aid? It says tax ruling, but taxes and state aid are no longer mentioned in your mission letter. Is that right?
Well, I think that taxation is always a very passionate issue in whatever context we may work. Yeah. And taxation and energy taxation is part of what Commissioner Hoekstra has in his mission letter, and we work as a cluster. I have in my cluster very valuable friends who are pretty committed to this consistency along the different portfolios that deal with energy, climate, and environment. And I think that this is key not only for the industrial approaches, but it is also important in terms of something that has not come up during this conversation, which is access to housing and how we can combine the public capacity to invest and to facilitate the transformation of the industry with the response that citizens may require. And to a certain extent, taxation is also part of this equation.
Okay, a final question, and if you can give the answer rather briefly, and this could be a day-long conference. How will you ensure a level playing field and stay on track for the green transition at the same time? How will you ensure that the companies that are fit to compete instead of being unduly held back by regulation? Maybe you can say something about regulation.
I think that we need a clear and simple regulation. And it's true that once we have a common view on where we want to be, we need flexibility and simplicity on the different pathways to achieve these goals. And this is something that is pretty demanded by companies, as it is pretty demanded by companies, reliability, predictability, and stability. And if this is my final word, my final sentence, where in the world you may find a continent with such a big size in terms of markets that is more reliable, stable, and predictable. So we need to combine our regulation with a clear understanding of the benefits and the advantages of investing in Europe.
Thank you very much. Teresa, thank you. And stay where you are. And thanks for all your questions. I'd like to give a quick moment of quality time to Nathalie Erard, who is Senior Vice President at Airbus, in charge of EU and NATO affairs. Nathalie, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you very much. Dear Vice President, thank you very much for your very straightforward and clear messages this morning and taking the time to answer our questions. This is going to be a very important mandate for European policies, citizens, and as well the European industry. You know that on some sectors, it is in dire straits in terms of competitiveness. As Airbus, we believe in a sustainable and autonomous Europe. I think on the commercial aircraft side, our employees across Europe have proven that through European innovation and European technology, we can build a European leader. We are able, based in Europe, to export 80% of our aircraft outside of Europe. So we need now to go to sustainable aviation, we do believe that it is important that we work hands in hands, that aviation brings a lot to Europe in terms of prosperity, connectivity, trade exchanges, and as well, of course, peace, because it favors exchanges. So we do hope that the Clean Industrial Deal will incorporate the Destination 2050 enablers, the innovation, disruptive technologies support, but as well investment in sustainable aviation fuel and better air traffic management. Unfortunately, on the space and defense sectors, the situation is much more dire. After weak investment and fragmented approach across Europe. And of course, that hinders the innovation of the European continent on very key dual technologies in space and defense. So that's going to be a very important mandate to be able to innovate again, to invest in key programs, but as well to support us to create scales in the worldwide competition. We are doing our part, we are innovating, we are using duality, trying to invest in platforms on the civil and defense side to get the best of the investment. But we need as well the European Union and the European government to support us to create scale. And with the EU defense tool, the EU space programs, you have the ability to make a change, as well as with the new competition policies framework you were hinting at. It's very important that the EU is supporting EU preference for its EU defense tools and EU space tools. And it's very important that we are able to create the same worldwide players as in the Airbus commercial aircraft in space and defense. Thank you very much, Vice President, and good luck for a very difficult mandate. Thank you.
And a final word from Teresa, please.
Oh,
Final comment. Yeah.
no, thank you. I think that you raise issues connecting to the magic words. So, innovation, 2050 enablers, commitment, participation, understanding, global markets. But you also connected back to some of the aspects that are important. You commented on the space and defense. And I think that this is one of the issues where we are already revisiting what it means and how we can combine efforts in a way that strengthens our capacities to defense, peace and cooperation, as you say. And just to add, it was not something that you raised, but something that has not come along this conversation. It is space, but it is also the ocean, which is an asset that we need to take into consideration. So coming back to transportation, but also coming back to the space, the ocean space, that is being used in terms of source of resources or in terms of new capacities and innovation. So I think that your words, innovation, tech, cooperation, sustainable future, enablers, and a level playing field at the global market is key, and I'm willing to work with you.
Teresa Ribera, Executive Vice President of the European Commission, thank you so much. Big hand, and thank you to our sponsors and to you. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.